Assalamu alaikum. Good day. I just bid farewell to you because I never wanted a very long lecture for you. It was already 15 minutes that you must be concentrating. So here's few more points about the Reconstruction and its impact on American life at that point of time and for the future and all the times to come. I finished my discussion previously upon the importance of education because the former slaves were very eager to learn. Nearly all appreciated the importance of knowing how to read and write. Basically, education is most successful if one who gets the education is eager and really wishes to learn. Schools and other institutions were supported chiefly by property taxes, and these, of course, hit well-to-do planters hard. Hence, much of the complaining about the extravagance of Reconstruction governments concealed traditional selfish objections to paying for necessary public projects. Education is a public responsibility, a public right, and a public activity. So the South's grave economic problems got complicated by rebuilding of its political system. If you wish to build a real good political system, you have to invest in it. You have to invest in it. The Civil War also disorganized the Southern economy. And in the long run, the abolition of slavery released immeasurable quantities of human energy previously stifled, but the immediate effect was to create confusion. The question is that the freedom to travel the world, to see the world, was one of the slaves' most cherished rights. To know more, to come into contact with others and experience the knowledge of each other. They soon realized that they have to earn a living. A small plot of land, they hoped, would complete their independence. But there is economics of freedom also. And the figures were given by the people who never wanted the black people to be free. Their figures were faulty. Many radicals agreed with them. माफ़ कीजिएगा. I hope it is not a coronavirus cough. I've been speaking for a longer period, so my throat has gone dry, I think. I should have kept a glass of water with me. The former slaves, therefore, had either to agree to work for their former owners or strike out on their own. The work and its demands, and coupled with white suspicion of slaves for self-directed help. Productivity decreased and a stance of freedom, a comfort, a greater license they got. White Southerners misunderstood the reasonable desire of blacks to devote more time to leisure and family activities. They took it evidence that blacks were lazy. They were not lazy. They just wanted to have some interaction with life and enjoy it. And meanwhile, the gender roles were being defined also. The family life was changed of ex-slaves. Male authority increased when husbands became true heads of families. When blacks became citizens, the men acquired rights and powers denied to all women, such as the right to hold public office and serve on juries. Similarly, black women became more like white women, devoting themselves to separate spheres where their lives revolve around house, keeping the child rearing. The shortage of money blacks solved, and they were ready to work for cash. So sharecropping and crop lien system came in. Crop lien system is like a credit system. And they wanted to share tenancy. Many white farmers were also trapped by the sharecropping system. New fencing laws kept them from grazing livestock on underdeveloped land, a practice common before the Civil War. But the main cause of southern rural poverty for whites as well as for blacks was the lack of enough capital to finance the sharecropping system. The crop lien system, the credit system developed, and to protect their investment, leaders insisted that growers concentrate on readily marketable cash crops, tobacco, sugar, and especially cotton. So, credit system became helpful. And when they had this backing of a credit system, though the recovery was slow, but new produce was coming in, and South declined in manufactured goods, because people who were involved in manufacturing went into the manufacture of cotton cloth. That increased. So despite this increase, the South's share of national output of manufactured goods declined sharply during the Reconstruction era. This has to bring in a white backlash. The black majority was significant, and blacks were not numerous enough to win elections alone. So the people of this sort did not fear black economic competition. Taking a broad view, they could see that improving the lot of former slaves would benefit all classes. And this was, I think, a much more rational outlook for that. White fearful of black numbers. And then they started to have the Ku Klux Klan, like the terrorist organizations, to deter blacks, to frighten them, and even kill them. The Ku Klux Klan was crushed, and terrorism was basically to control blacks. This has always been the weapon of the human beings, to terrorize the one they think is not equal to them. Mississippi, the red shirts came in, and fear and terrorism became a greater threat to blacks than anything else. But North nationalism was increasing. But had not Washington and Jefferson been Virginians, was not Andrew Jackson Carolina born, because most Southerns had little real love or respect for blacks, interestingly. Their interest in racial equality flagged once they felt reasonably certain that blacks would not be re-enslaved if left to their own devices in the South. The free labor, because of increasing complex with their workforce, became a key word in those days, and they became more sympathetic to the Southern point of view, and therefore more willing to let Southern whites reassert control over the blacks. The elections of 1876 became disputed because corruption in government was the most widely discussed issue. The Republicans nominated Governor Rutherford, a former general with an unsmirched reputation. The Democrats picked Governor Samuel J. Tilden of New York, a wealthy lawyer who had attracted national attention for his part in breaking up the Tweed Ring in New York City. However, Republican leaders had anticipated the possible loss of Florida, South Carolina, Louisiana, and were prepared to use their control of the election machinery. The Illinois legislature elected Davis senator. He had to resign from the court and the commission. because in those partisan times, independents were rare even on the Supreme Court. No neutral was available to replace him. The vacancy went to Associate Justice Joseph Bradley of New Jersey, a Republican. While all this was happening, more strifes, more struggles, the Compromise of 1877 was thought a workable solution, and forces of compromise had been at work behind the scene in Washington for some time. Like all compromises, this agreement, which was made on March 2nd, was basically declared as the deciding factor in the presidential election. For most of the former slaves, the future was to be bleak, forgotten in the North, manipulated in national affairs, rebuffed by the Supreme Court, voiceless in national affairs. They had, and their descendants were condemned in the interest of sectional harmony to lives of poverty, indignity, and little hope. But the rest of the United States, meanwhile, continued its golden march towards wealth and power. I'll meet you for the second week next week.